Day 729 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, once again, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 408,000 military personnel losses, which represents an additional 1,000 losses in the past day. All as a result of Russia's 3-day special military operation, which is just about to complete its second year. Coincidentally, right at the time where 729 days just happens to be 3 Venus days. But even if Russia was going by Venus days, we can still see that there's a lot left to be desired for Putin and his war. Then, as for hardware losses, 3 tanks, 37 APVs, and a whopping 49 artillery. Then we'll head across to the map today and start out in a very different spot today, as the pro-Russian separatist region of Transnistria, which is reportedly planning to hold a referendum or otherwise seek annexation by Russia soon. And Transnistria, which is a narrow strip of land between the Moldovan side and the Ukrainian side, has long been a point of contention due to its pro-Russian stance, and also happens to house a significant stockpile of military equipment, Soviet-era military equipment like vehicles and artillery shells. And this internationally unrecognized state, or otherwise recognized as part of Moldova, has about 4,000 troops stationed within its walls. And by walls, I mean this. Yep. That's part of the Ukrainian border to Transnistria. It's not much. In fact, its capital of Tiraspol is only about 5 or 10 kilometers from the Ukrainian border itself. But now it seems that Vladimir Putin is expected to address the situation in his upcoming speech to the Russian Federal Assembly, potentially recognizing Transnistria's annexation. So once again, this guy is just annexing anything he can left, right, and center. However, from a military standpoint, Ukraine's military is significantly larger and more experienced than Transnistria's forces. Then combine that alongside with the potential support from Moldova and Romania, poses an extremely formidable challenge to any military engagements by Transnistria or Russia forces in the area. But I would think that almost anyone's guess would be that, after some annexation agreement, Putin will just put significant Mother Russia pressure on this small, unofficial nation, if you will, for them to give up all their old Soviet stockpiles. Then he'll possibly just neglect the region, unless of course to use it as a backdrop for some dodgy political clout in an argument later on. Then heading across to Ukraine's Donbass into the Bakhmut front, as new Russian advances have been observed towards the north and east of Ivaniska. So I'll zoom in right there for that one. And while some of these advances were not entirely unexpected, the recent positions held by the Russian forces of the area north of Ivaniska raises concerns for the AFU. Then moving a bit further south, so Russian forces also managed to take up some positions in the southwest of the location of Avdiivka at Severna. All as head-on engagements turned into a great deal of difficulty for Russia, as far as Lashto-Kina is concerned, with the Russian army's attempt to continue some erratic assaults after the Ukrainian withdrawal from Avdiivka. And given what we're hearing from the larger politosphere, I have a strong feeling that the Ukrainian withdrawal from Avdiivka is not in vain, as it appears to be creating a renewed rallying atmosphere among allied nations to Ukraine. Then moving along, because somewhere in the east, a bit of an odd one this one, but a Russian serviceman was filming an attack on their artillery systems by Ukrainian FPV drones. It's almost like they were expecting it and just hanging back, awaiting its final destruction, as did happen. Then also somewhere in the east, 2 Russian Zu-23-2s, these are anti-aircraft platforms, were also destroyed by the AFU, And these Zu-23-2s are quite commonly used on both sides, as they're lightweight and towed air defenses of a 23mm caliber design, sort of like a smaller towed variant of, say, the 35mm Flak Panzer Gepards. Then briefly to the Zaporizhia front, as we saw a damaged and abandoned Russian T-54 in the Robotina area, with otherwise no changes to this area of the map today. Then moving across, because somewhere in Kherson, we impressively saw the destruction of two Russian air defense systems, the Strela 10 and the Tor M1. Now, both are each single unit designs for air defense systems, which means they were taken out in their entirety, and not just, say, the launcher components of themselves. Then, also in this oblast, we saw Ukraine's continued focus on Russian Zala UAV operators, taking out one such operator unit in Chornyanka. And this almost feels like deja vu to me, because I'm quite sure this happened with the same Zala unit type at the same location about a month ago. Which, if true, means that Russia is just refilling its ranks, which they are no stranger to. Meanwhile, next door, air defenses were active in Odessa due to a Russian Shahed drone wave attack. And all the while, at the same time, Madman Medvedev, head of the Russian Security Council, was stating Odessa is a Russian city. And interestingly, Medvedev also said that Russian forces will have to march on Kyiv again, and quote, if not now, then at some point later. So make no mistake, the Russian government is simply an international bully that will take anything they can get their hands on. So they'll only respond in an appropriate international context if they are met with strength. It's that simple. Ooh, by the way, just from a moment ago, I like that. Madman Medvedev. That could stick. Then we'll head across to some news for today. Start out once again with Ukrainian hardware news. And we'll start off with a small but probably very deadly piece of tech, at least indirectly speaking. So enter the Ukrainian drone equipped with a repeater, all designed to increase the range of its deadly one-way FPV drones. And sure, it's more of an innovation than invention, but it's nice to see Ukraine continue to push the limits with their small in-house developments like these. Then in some more news, the UK will provide Ukraine with 200 more Brimstone anti-tank missiles. And note that these laser-guided missiles can be air or ground launched with a range of up to 12 kilometers and are designed for precision strikes against armored targets and can adapt to engage moving targets as well. Then in some other news, Denmark has just signed a 10-year security agreement with Ukraine and has just committed to a new military aid package worth approximately $247 million. This support includes a wide array of military aid, with about $60 million assigned to the purchase of a small number of the 800,000 artillery shells from the Czech Republic that they received recently. And the package also includes air defense munitions, mine clearance equipment, drones, radars, and communication tools. Now, the Danish PM Frederiksen also emphasized the critical nature of international solidarity, stating, quote, if we don't stand together, Ukraine won't stand and potentially Europe won't either. So this package from Denmark marks the country's 15th contribution to Ukraine since the conflict escalated in February 2022, underscoring Denmark's role as a key supporter in the region's struggle for security and freedom. Then in some relatable news, now Italy is set to sign a bilateral security agreement of its own with Ukraine. So one by one, we see each country signing up, which helps to give a great deal more autonomy in each nation's ability to support Ukraine. Or in other words, smaller but faster aid packages that can be tailored to Ukraine's needs as required. Then moving across to some Russian hardware updates. So for this one, the newly invented Russian military exoskeleton. Now, there is some mixed ideas on what this really is. Some say it's possibly a mobile anti-drone defense suit, but it's not actually constructed the same way. Similar, but not at all the same. It actually looks more like a top-heavy personal carry device, kind of like an upside-down babushka shopping cart. So, likely an infantry device for moving around equipment with, which is now more important than ever, given that it's becoming something of a luxury for Russian troops moving around, given that all of the Scooby-Doo Buhunka vans are probably now starting to face their own extinction-level event from being lost in Ukraine. Then moving across to something of a Russian military mobilization blunder segment today, guys. So, after many Russians continued to attend makeshift memorials following the death of the late opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who died in prison in Russia on February 16th, as a result of this, many were arrested and locked up, with then only to receive military draft summons notices upon their release from custody. Just wow. This country, this Russia, is turning more and more into a dictatorship day by day. And I also do find it strange how sending some of your most anti-war citizens to serve in a war has any benefit for you at all, as it's just a situation waiting to backfire, as many will likely end up performing mutiny once pushed into the military. It truly boggles the mind. Oh, and it's not just the guys that are having the problems, because recently a woman in Russia asked a church for a memorial prayer for Alexei Navalny, and long story short, after which the church sold her out to the police, giving her all sorts of legal troubles. Just what kind of society has this country become? Oh, I think we all know the answer to that one. Then moving across to a lighter segment today, so Gerasimov has reappeared. Yes, lighter news, so allow me to explain. Because after Gerasimov was notably absent from public appearance since around the end of last year, many were starting to question, where is he? Is he okay? Did he get hit in a Crimea strike? And did he meet the same fate as, well, so many others within Russia? Well, no longer, so it doesn't appear so, as he was recently seen giving out medals to Avdiivka soldiers. And so this is lighter news because, well, this hero of the Russian Federation, according to Wikipedia, is the chief of the general staff of the Russian Armed Forces, who is designated for overseeing the strategic and operational management of the Russian military. He also happens to be the biggest yes man you've ever met. And similar to the Russian Defense Minister, Shoigu, they are run like puppets by the all-controlling Putin. Not able to voice concerns for fear of reprisal or something much worse, thereby sort of always steering the Russian military to a slow demise. And I don't actually consider Gerasimov or Shoigu as overly corrupt per se, but I find it to be more of a case of them being wedged between corruption at all levels above and below them as they steer this train wreck of an invasion into oblivion. So there's your lighter piece of news for the day. Then, as for a quick funny to round it all off for today, guys, because the dictatorship that wants to act like a democracy is making all sorts of theater strides as Russia leads up to their election cycle for the next president. Take, for example, this babushka, who received a gift from the current Russian administration for agreeing to vote for Putin. But by the very next sentence, she basically spilt the beans, saying a moment later that nobody asked her to do this. So why does Russia do this? Why do they go to this length in an internationally recognized rigged system for which Putin has been in power basically since the late 1990s? Well, theatrics like these all go a long way to help legitimize Putin's seat of power, or continued seat of power, as it has to be a semi-plausible event for re-election, otherwise things can fall off the rails really quick and unmask the dodgy practices undertaken by the Kremlin that has kept Putin in power for so long. And hey, although I don't recommend political or election betting online, I've got to imagine that this little guy's odds are pretty high. So thanks guys for watching, I hope you've enjoyed, and please continue to like and comment as always. I really appreciate that too, and all of the support, goes without saying. But yeah, thanks again, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!